My lords, today we shall discuss the 10 rarest and least likely to occur anomalies in our galaxy. Furthermore, I bet good credits, my lords, that most of you will never have encountered the majority of these events. We'll go from 10 through to 1, with 1 being potentially the rarest event that can or will ever occur in our galaxy. And for number 10, we begin with giant alien spiders. This is largely rare because it's tied to asteroids, which although common, share a rather large pool of events and has a branching outcome. It begins with finding an asteroid sensor relay. What appeared to be a simple asteroid was in fact a long dormant relay station with complex electronics and advanced sensors set up to send signals back to an unknown ancient empire. The asteroid had been through several impacts over time, which had damaged some of its internal structure. Despite this, we initially assumed that we would be able to extract from alien technology from the relay station. However, it would seem that we were wrong. The station, despite scans, was not uninhabited. Instead, it was crawling with giant alien arthropods. The initial probes that we deployed to search the station only returned skittering shadows and large mandibles before the signal was lost. Deep space scans of the station have now revealed what we postulate to be an incredibly complex databank that could be extremely valuable to the Commonwealth. To reach the databank, we're going to have to put boots on the ground, and they're going to have to deal with these spiders. Fortunately, we have many clever scientists, and one of them thought rather than attempt to fight our way through these giant spiders, we could simply vent the station, blowing the filthy aliens into space and giving us complete access. This is what we did, and it was a great victory. Number 9. The Ancient Vending Machine. Like the giant spiders we just discussed, the Ancient Vending Machine is also an asteroid-specific event. We first discovered a signal beacon orbiting a lone asteroid in the Epsilon Alpha system. It pinged our science vessel with what appeared to be a marketing message.
Dr. Pepper, what's the worst that could happen?
Effectively calling to travelers to visit it. Once in range, we identified upon the asteroid sat a giant metallic monolith of unknown design. It was majestic. It had a smooth slab of metal, and the once garish pigment patterns on the front have now been reduced to mere flecks. The machine did have some alien writing upon it, written just above what we assumed to be a small power outlet. The message roughly translated to "provide us with energy for a reward." We thought it prudent to do as the machine requested and attempted to activate the monolith by providing it with energy through this port. The machine whirred and stirred, ancient internal mechanisms clanked. After much whirring and buzzing and a dramatic pause, a metallic panel slid back and a ship-sized cylinder rolled out of the machine. It turned out to be a can of drink, but colossally large, and miraculously had been preserved against the ravages of time. According to market data, this long-forgotten alien drink is 20% more delicious than our current range of drinkable products. The men and women of the Commonwealth will be pleased indeed. Number 8, and despite being widely well known, this event is still incredibly rare: the brain slugs. The brain slugs spawn from the abandoned settlements anomaly, and this can only be found on habitable planets, which also have dangerous wildlife upon them. This means, of course, its rarity somewhat varies depending on the number of habitable planets within the galaxy, but the dangerous wildlife effect and the sheer number of potential habitable planet anomalies does mean this is rather rare indeed. During a routine survey of Rogan 3, Dr. Conrad identified the ruins of a Bronze Age civilization. They appear to be an aquatic humanoid species that Dr. Conrad designated as the Decapodians. While the ruins suggest a once advanced agrarian society, the current inhabitants seem to have devolved into non-sapient beasts. Dr. Conrad's investigation revealed that the uplift and subsequent devolution were tied to a spinocranial neural symbiont, informally dubbed a brain slug. These organisms attach to the host's spinal column, facilitating massive increases in intellectual capacity. However, as the Doctor's recovered personal logs reveal, the price of this intellect is a total erosion of the self. Dr. Conrad, who partook in these brain slugs, describes a harrowing descent into a shared consciousness, where he lost his personal identity, emotions, and ultimately free will. Tragically, this resulted in a large proportion of his crew also becoming under the influence of the brain slugs, and the vessel broke protocol and set direct course for the Sol system. The threat of domestic infestation was averted by the decisive action of our military, who intercepted the vessel. When the compromised crew refused to stand down, our military was forced to neutralize the ship, and it was destroyed with all hands, following a secondary explosion. Number 7. Data Diamond. Data Diamond occurs only on frozen worlds and competes with a large range of other anomalies, making it rather rare indeed. We first noticed that a superficial layer of surface ice on the frozen world GK8736 covered an abnormally large crystal deposit. We also detected the presence of a faint signal, and thus went to investigate further. After setting up to drill into the ice layer, Dr. Shaw, the lead scientist, experienced intense sensations. While not physically harmed, the doctor reported being overwhelmed by disjointed visual and olfactory hallucinations depicting an unknown alien species. A special project was prepared to investigate this further. What we discovered was that below the ice, the crystal made up the majority of the planet's mass. Essentially, the planet was a giant crystal covered in earth and water. Samples suggested that this dense lattice was actually used for data storage. Estimates indicated the volume of the stored knowledge is magnitudes beyond everything in our collective database. It is also likely that the builders of the crystal used the psionic resonance to imprint this data. Dr. Shaw is so intrigued that they've requested permission to oversee the creation of an automated research station on the planet, and we of course gave the doctor permission. News would follow, however. Nearing the completion of the automated station, there was a sudden spike in activity from the crystal, which appears to have left the doctor quite dead. Most disturbingly, however, not long after, we received an autonomous communique claiming to be from the doctor themselves. While their body's nervous system is beyond repair, their mind has been trapped within the crystal. Trying to make the best of the situation, Dr. Shaw has offered to assist with any future research into the crystal database. A somewhat bitter outcome indeed. Number 6. The Horizon Signal. Black holes are, despite opinion, quite a rare galactic phenomenon. Indeed, you can expect approximately 5% of all galactic systems to contain a black hole. There is a 20% chance that one of these black holes will receive the grace and love of the worm. Of course, it's worth noting that special black hole systems, such as those containing dimensional horrors or the Infinity Machine, will block this event. And remember, you have to survey said black hole system to find and embrace the love of the worm. This all makes it quite rare indeed. Now, as you know, I've discussed the worm in detail elsewhere. I'll give a brief summary before moving on to number 5. Drawing from the classified Horizon Signal files, we documented the total collapse of an advanced civilization at the hands of the worm, a predatory extra-dimensional entity that employed psionic subversion to facilitate its entry into our realm. The corrupting signal began at the Kalor black hole, with cryptic and paradox-laden transmissions proclaiming things such as gravity is desire and time is sight. This lured a science vessel and lead researcher into a path that they would not come back from. As the worm's influence began to spread throughout this empire, they would succumb to a societal rot. The rise of a cult called the Coils of God would see to that, and they would suffer mysterious disappearances of entire populations across their planets. This decay would climax with the construction of the Omega Alignment. This turned out to be a summoning beacon built by a people who believed that they were inviting a god's love, the worm. However, upon arrival, it would seem that the worm did not embrace its worship as once thought, but utterly consumed their entire capital system, leaving behind a void where an empire once stood. We of course must remain vigilant against any such psionic incursions, for while the worm's current whereabouts are unknown, the Commonwealth's battle fleets stand ready to purge this horror, should it ever appear within our stars. Before we move on to number 5, my lords, it may be prudent to briefly explain how we managed to calculate the rarity for some of these events. Using our wonderful Sentry array, we can view an approximation planet and stellar body distribution throughout our known galaxy. Thus, this helps us enormously in calculating the odds of such events occurring. Nevertheless, let's move on to number 5. For number 5, I've 2 events for you. Although not officially linked, they are both incredibly rare and do somewhat go together. It is a happy coincidence. The first of the 2 is debate and discussion. Our science teams reported that a newly discovered planet was indeed once home to a somewhat advanced civilization, although one that brought about its own end before ever reaching the stars. By analysing the few fragments that could be recovered from the ancient wireless information depots on the planet, our researchers pieced together the narrative of the civilization's demise. At some point in the distant past, an ideological schism developed over the definitions of philosophies that we know today as collectivism and individualism. While the nature of individualism is blindingly obvious to the peoples of Earth and Unity, this civilization evidently tore itself apart over the question of which moral stances should be attributed to which ideology. It's not even like their real ethics, is it? As an unofficial follow-up and a super rare event to boot, we have the Towel Bearer, also known as Stay Calm. Returning from the desolate surface of said planet, Science Officer Hannibal brought with them a sheet of woven plant fibre. Its exact origin and purpose was unknown, but it has proven quite absorbent in tests. While useless to the sciences, Science Officer Hannibal has taken a shine to the thing and now carries it with them wherever they go. The crew whispers that this officer is a real poopy prude. Number 4. Blinding Fate. We are getting increasingly rare now, my lords, and number 4 is rare due to the sheer lack of pulsars that exist throughout space. Indeed, we estimate that less than 1% of galactic star systems contain within them a pulsar. Therefore, any anomalies tied to a pulsar are extremely rare indeed. The rarest of the 3 is Blinding Fate, sometimes known as the fate of the Kotalo. In summary, our science teams found a drifting vessel of exquisite design, but sadly it was mostly a wreck. The crew appeared to have succumbed to the radiation of the nearby pulsar, though we were able to ID the ship as the Kotalo. The design remained very alien, however. The mystery would take a turn when a living, identical Kotalo entered the system. These extra-dimensional explorers greeted us with jubilation, sharing data of their home galaxy. However, upon seeing the data that we had recovered from their own future wreck, their joy would of course turn to terror. In a desperate attempt to outrun their supposed destiny, the Kotalo would flee. Tragically, it would seem that our warning would serve as the catalyst for the very doom that we sought to prevent. The ship collided with a comet, creating a second wreck, a copy of the one that we had already found. 2 versions of the same grave now haunt our senses. Like many of these events, a sad outcome indeed. We are now on to the 3 rarest events that can occur in our galaxy, and my lords, these are so rare that despite my experience, I have not witnessed them without using Shroud Arts. Number 3 is Drifting Battlefield. This is an event chain starting with the transmissions decoded, which can only spawn on a Gaia and continental world, and then of course has to compete with other anomalies as well. Despite being one of the oldest anomalies in the galaxy, written into code over a decade ago, it remains extremely rare. It all began when we picked up an unidentified repeating signal coming from a large Gaia world. While this planet was otherwise seemingly untouched by alien hands, a lone monolith of some sleek off-white mineral stood atop a hill in the southern hemisphere. It is from this monument that the signal emerged. The enclosure was clearly built for longevity rather than resonance. Our science teams quickly decoded the signal, and it turned out to be a memorial message, attributed to the loss of hundreds of lives in a battle millennia past. A stalwart alliance apparently fell victim to treachery and deceit, and a massive fleet wiped itself out before the enemy even arrived, as ally would turn on ally. Apparently, these desiccated hulks were left in place as floating grave markers, the crews having been destroyed by surgical strikes to weak points in their ship's hull. We identified the location of the battle and made haste to investigate. Although many of the ships referenced in the beacon had been reduced to dust and ashes, some remained intact. Between them, we were able to restore 6 military vessels to working order. The ancient ragtag armada has now been partially resurrected, Although the dispatched engineers cannot exactly agree on how they managed to accomplish this, the vessels have been added to our war fleets. Number 2. The Crystalline Empire. An empire who lives at the centre of the galaxy, the anomaly is only available to void dwellers and has approximately a 1% chance per galaxy to appear, making it extremely difficult to experience. Historically, we have assumed that the region surrounding Sagittarius A star to be a barren graveyard of celestial matter. Yet, a powerful signal bounced through multiple galactic relays has proven otherwise. This transmission led our expeditionary forces to a pulsar system, dubbed the Outer Gate, featuring a single wormhole, the frozen world designated Snow Crystal, and a heavily fortified space station. We made contact with an alien calling itself Commander Ali Sakar, whose rhetoric was steeped in a peculiar mix of arrogance and guardedness. He addressed us as younger races and described the galactic core as a sanctuary of such splendor that we were not yet worthy to witness. However, the actions of this crystalline empire consistently betrayed a sense of desperation that contradicted their claim that they had built a utopia. Shortly after contact, they requested we host one of their elite scientists, and while this individual proved to be a valuable asset in particle physics, they remained entirely aloof regarding their culture. This was followed by a more taxing request, the transfer of millions of crystalline refugees to our planets. These unruly elements, as the commander called them, were displaced by an order of the mysterious Great One to preserve harmony of their borders. Given the fact we wanted to maintain good diplomatic relations, we set aside an orbitable habitat for them. They now reside there, yet despite our hospitality, refused to divulge any meaningful intelligence regarding their homeworld, or the messenger that allegedly foretold our arrival. The difficulties continued when we received a message out of the blue requesting assistance in repairing a small calamity within one of their cities. They essentially wanted a small quantity of raw materials, which they should have been able to produce with ease. This transmission was the final point of contact. For the last several decades, the Crystalline Empire has maintained complete silence. All hails to the Outer Gate station went unanswered, and the wormhole remains silent. We're now faced with a profound dilemma. We have integrated millions of their people into our society, and yet we remain no closer to understanding their true nature. Do we continue this passive observation, or do we attempt a more militaristic solution? And finally, my lords, number 1. Perhaps the rarest event to have ever occurred in our galaxy, if indeed it has ever occurred at all. The Celestial Orrery, which is, incidentally, a Sol variant. We have, as you know, discovered several Sol variants before. This one, however, was very different indeed. Its star, i.e. Sol, was not where it should be at all, and many of the planetary bodies were well off their regular orbits. It was extremely bizarre. Upon closer inspection, we detected strange gravimetric readings across the system. They pulsed from the inner asteroid belt to the desolate planet at the heart of the system. We quickly established that the gravitational stability of the system is maintained by dark matter emitters positioned within its asteroid belt. These emitters are controlled by a supercomputer located on the central planet. Records from this central computer suggest that the entire system was an experiment site for gravity manipulation, established by an ancient civilization. We were left with two options: leave the system as it was and use the colossal research computer for our own gains, or take the machine apart. We chose to take the machine apart, with some of us noting it was probably a bad idea. Well, this was not a good idea at all. The entire system imploded. Every stellar body was utterly destroyed, including the investigating science team. A lesson for caution, indeed.